My name is Jesse Constancio. A member of the Chicano Park Steering Committee and a board member of the Chicano Park Museum and Cultural Center.
When did you first meet David Rico?
You know, I know that I had run across David on several occasions, but in terms of just meeting him and coming in contact with him, I had just left the Farm Workers Union and came back here, and my first week here, you know, I guess I didn't really know David. He was working here in the building. David, like always doing security, was trying to figure out who I was, and David was never shy. And I just started walking. He goes, "Hey man, who are you and where are you from?" And so I broke it down to whom I was, and it turns out we had mutual friends and mutual experiences. So that's the first time I actually met David Rico. The first time I remember encountering David Rico was when I was a student at San Diego State. And the big question, if you will, at the time was Marxist-Leninism versus cultural nationalism. And there was a heavy Marxist-Leninist presence in Mecha at the time. And Mecha wanted to change their name. It's always been going on like that, but and the issue they had was that there was no such a thing as a Chicano under the auspices of the so-called Marxist-Leninists at the time. So David came to a meeting. Alorista was the spokesperson for the cultural nationalists, and Jesus Moya was the spokesperson for the Marxist-Leninists. And of course, as a young machista, all of us were at the meeting, eager to learn, you know, had opinions going both ways. But I'll never forget when David walked in, he walked in with about 60 people. You know, about half of them were berets, and really, really captured the attention of everybody. And so that's the first time I heard David Rico speak. But in actually meeting him is when I first came back from the farm workers. And that's when I started getting a chance to, you know, to know him better and to work with him on various things.
What's a memory that you'd like to share of David, or an experience that you've had with him, or something you've done with him?
My memory of what?
With David.
With David?
You'd like to share an experience, a memory?
Well, there were a lot of them. You know, like you know, we did in those days. We had a lot of marches going on. We had regular meetings going on. You know, every month we were having community meetings. There was a lot of activity going on, and David was at all of them. You know, wherever there was something going on that had to do with Raza, David was there. But in terms of memories, we're sitting right here in the room that we're sitting in right now, we're during the struggle of to get rid of the junkyards. And there was a lot of activity going on. And one of the things that was happening that people don't talk about, and for a variety of reasons, but I think it's important to be said here today, is that there was real strong resistance on behalf of the community, and that was led by the Brown Berets. Part of that was torching junkyards. You know, we told them to make it clear to them. We'd have picket lines, we'd go to them, you know, tell them we wanted them out of here, we were fighting with the city. And that was a side thing that was going on. I'm not gonna sit here and say that David did it, or that I did it, or any of us did it. But that's a piece of history that's not really told. There was that level of resistance here in the community. But what happened was we had just had a large community march when our idea was we were gonna go to all the junkyards in the neighborhood, and those days, they were everywhere. You get, you know 4 blocks this way and 4 blocks that way, you can encounter 8 to 10 junkyards at that time. And so we left the park, we went around the neighborhood, up Newton, hit up a couple of junkyards like we did on a pretty regular basis. And so the next day, this used to be the reception room right here. Sky came in, big white guy, you know, he looked like Haas, big 350-pound guy, thick, name was Ralph. He owned a putt-putt shot across the street. And he came in and he asked for me because I was the spokesperson the day before. And so and there was an article in the paper. He came and asked for me. Lorraine called me up front. I came in and in a very confrontational way, you know, came in to make it clear with his finger at me, trying to put his finger in my face. He says, I want you to know you're not dealing with no flower shops here. We got, you know, we're waiting for you. And right then I heard, cha-ching. And I didn't even need to look back. I already knew who it was. It was David Rico. And he told him, we got something waiting for you too. It was a different time. It was a different time, you know, and it had to be much more serious than it is today. It was definitely serious. Remember the same incident. I remember that same cha-ching. Matter of fact, I never told David this, but that should have been his nickname, cha-ching, because he really favored the shotgun. It was his favorite tool, if you will. Another time we were having a confrontation with another political organization. I'll refrain from sharing their name right now. I might get worked up and share it later. But here again, there was a group from Los Angeles, and we had called them out. They wanted to meet with us. We met, and not knowing what to prepare ourselves for. Criticism of us that we weren't involved in armed revolutionary struggle. Neither were they, but they had the rhetoric for it. And so when we sat down to, you know, talk with them, we didn't know what they came. And here again, I remember hearing that cha-ching in the background when things got a little testy, and things calmed down real quick. But those are memories that come to my mind, but really my fondest memories of David is being in marches, watching him, you know, doing security. You know, he always took care of the principals, whether it was Herman or Corky or Cesar, whoever the principal was at the time, David, and others, you know, I think, you know, Herman in his article talks about, you know, the stuff we did with the CCR, being with, you know, with Charlie Vasquez, who was main security guy in those days. Howard Holman here in the park. You know, David would always work really closely with him. Union del Barrio and our marches and protests that we had, you know, David was always a part of that. And now that we talk about it and talk about memories, I want to share another one. And I shared it at David's funeral, but I'd like to share it with the public here today. We were having a tardeada. At the time we were with the Committee on Chicano Rights, and we were having a tardeada, you know, little fundraiser, you know, and that day the popular term used to be you're gonna have wine and cheese. You know, we were gonna have a chicharron Lowenbrow, you know, meeting, you know, and where everybody's having a good time, laughing, you know, carne asada going on, and we got the news that a young baby had just died at the border. Because the migra wouldn't allow them to come into the country because the baby didn't have papers. Baby was a U.S. citizen. You know, this wasn't an isolated incident. This is something that happened regularly, you know, in a large part because we were, you know, like watchdogs watching over every move they made, and these things came to light pretty quickly. We decided that night that we wanted to, you know, throw a demonstration at the border, and I'll never forget. You know, this is within 24 hours. You know, this is a lot of the stuff that we did all the time. It seemed like it wasn't long planned. It was like we make a decision tonight, and tomorrow we'd hit the streets, and all of us had jobs and other stuff that was going on, so we planned to have the march like after work, get off work a little bit early, you know, maybe we get there by 4 o'clock, you know, and I put this march together. I had identified there was a frontage road along the border, and when I was planning out the route, I thought, man, this is perfect, you know. the raza on the other side of the border, maybe we can get them to come in and we could do something together here. You know, at least that was the hope. Well, when I was leaving, there was a, the police were always following us. And a police, so-called community service policeman, George Salamando, turned around, he was sitting there watching me plan this out. The horrible thing was that when I went to get in my old jalopy, it wouldn't start. And it wasn't out of gas. It was just a jalopy. And so I had the march was going to be about a mile and a half, 2 miles at the most. And I needed to get back. Juan Parino, I hope you get a chance to talk to at some point, was waiting back at the park. He had the people all lined up, probably maybe 100, 125 people, ready to go, but they didn't know where we're going. And so Mr. Salamando offered me a ride. I had to decline, but wasn't going to come back in a police car. So say the least, I was in better shape in those days than I am now, but a 2 mile huff was quite the huff. Boom, 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 we got back, let's go. Everything's going, and the animal, the people were fired up. We had the signs, and felt good. Like, we had mobilized in a very short time, and we were attacking at every point, and so when we turned down that little road, only to find out that the Placa, George Salamando, gave them the heads up that we were coming that way. And so they had a block with the immigration, those, Ford Bronco types and they had in those days, with the cage on it and stuff. They took them and they blocked this little frontage road around and they weren't going to let us through. Now, as we were marching, Herman and some of the other members were on the other side putting together a press conference. And so the press was everywhere, right? They weren't there for us, but we were going to come in, and make our presentation. Well, what happened was when they blocked us off, we confronted them nose to nose. Nose to nose, we're going through and you're not going to stop us, and and you're going to go to jail if you go any further, and it turned into a physical confrontation. And I'll tell you, that's probably one of the most happiest days of my life. We made the Migra back down. They became afraid. And I guess George, actually the one, I don't know how this was supposed to work. You have a San Diego PD and who works for the city and the Border Patrol was a federal government agency, but George was calling shots. He's the one that took, very specifically, tell them like, oh, you don't want to go that route. And so they opened up and let us through. And that was the infamous We're Going Through march. But that was a fond memory as well. I guess I can go on and on. I can think of a whole bunch of them. We can go to the party scene if you want, because we did that too. I remember one time, David, when the Union first started, we did a fundraiser. And the fundraiser was to raise money for a youth conference that we were going to do to end body of warfare. And so we invited guys from a lot of neighborhoods, to come down and we were at Rico Pacheco's house that day, nice house. And unfortunately, it was my homeboys were the ones that started the pedo, and it turned into a big brawl. And I'll never forget, some guy came out screaming and hollering, and David clocked him, a one-punch clock, poof, and looked on the ground, he was out. And I asked Dave, what happened? He goes, I have no idea. I think he fell, I think these stories are important to share because I think it tells a side of David that needs to be told. David was a revolutionary. He was a militant. He believed in armed struggle. He believed that we all should be armed. Now, that didn't always fit into some of the politics, of our contemporary times. But David never ever wavered on that. You know, he was always ready to go to war. He was a warrior to the day he died. And I think that piece is important to tell.